You want some passive income and not get sued? That's what we're talking about today. We have Brian Donnelly, commercial real estate agent with Keller Williams in Apex, North Carolina. We'll be talking about how to get some money coming in and how to keep your license active. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, how are you?
Very good.
Good to
Thanks for
see you.
coming on.
No problem.
So you and I have had this conversation many times over. Before we get
Mhm.
into that, let's talk about your journey into commercial real estate. How'd you get into it?
Well, I'll try to make this long story short, but it was actually my wife. She worked for an IT company for a long time, and they were going to be doing some new offices. And Julie wore multiple hats in her role with this IT company. She basically served the two main decision makers. She was just the main gatekeeper. And through one thing led to another, and they found a commercial broker to do this big new office, and it was 20,000 square feet, Class A, long-term
Nice.
deal. So it took a long time because it was basically starting from scratch. It was almost like a build to suit. So it was about an 18-month window. During that time, Rhodey Dillon, who ended up being their broker, over that 18-month period, I got to meet him several times. And
Yeah.
during that time, I was in a transition myself professionally. And Rhodey Dillon's a local guy. And it's funny because you don't meet a lot of local guys in the Triangle. School in the Triangle, went to college in the Triangle, and it was really kind of cool. So he really literally knows everybody. And so I just said, hey, can I give you my resume and, kind of keep me in mind? And he goes, oh, hell no. He goes, you're going to come to work with me. I'm like, what? I don't know anything about what you do. He goes, I know you well enough at this juncture. You're going to do great. He goes, and it was funny too, because his pitch was spot on. He's just so honest and ethical. He's been in the commercial business a long time. He was probably in it 30 years at the time when I met him. His pitch was, I'll never forget, we were at a Carolina Hurricanes game having a beer, and he goes, you're not going to make anything for 18 months, but you're fine there because Julie's doing well. I'm going to teach everything you know because the North Carolina licensure is really about residential real estate. They really don't teach you commercial real estate. So I'm going to teach everything you need to know. In fact, when you start working with me after you get your license, you're going to forget just about most of what you actually learned in the classroom.
That's right.
And you're not, like I said, he's like, you're not going to make anything. If you survive, you're going to do well. I mean, it just was such a great, honest, direct pitch. And that's what I did. I went and got my license and treated it like a full-time job, getting the license itself. And I started to work for him, and I'm just naturally aggressive. And I think he knew that with me because he did say he likes student athletes, and I was a scholarship player at Duke and things like that. So he kind of knew my characteristics.
Yeah. I don't know if you got this from him or maybe it's the reason why he connected with. I would describe you as honest, ethical, and very straightforward. That's what I like
Almost too
about you.
direct sometimes.
Direct. It's a good thing. It's refreshing.
Yeah.
So that's one of the stories I get. A lot of the questions I get, when I'm talking to agents that are in the real estate, residential real estate side of things,
Yeah.
I wanted to get into commercial. And what you just said, 18 months is a
18
long
months.
time to go without income.
I was joined at the hip with him. He was my mentor. It's not like I was, thrown in the deep end. Okay, survive. No, I was first person in the office. I was answering that phone on the first ring. I was joining Rhodey on every meeting, every conference call, every tour, and he was just the best. An absolute great mentor. I just got so lucky.
Yeah. And that's hard right now. So for an
Yeah.
agent who may truly think about going on to that side of the real estate world, how do they get their training?
To be honest, I think the larger firms might be the appropriate pathway. When I say the larger firms, the larger commercial firms, because they have the bandwidth to bring in an agent, partner them up with either an individual or a couple individuals to be part of like a micro team. Like on a lot of flyers, a lot of brochures, we'll see multiple names now. When I first got in the business 13 years ago, it was usually a single agent attached to a listing. That has evolved, and it's really two or three, which is good because it shows depth. So I think agents that really want to get into it, and I laugh when I hear some agents like, oh yeah, I want to dabble in commercial real estate. I'm like, those words don't belong in the same sentence.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, even residential real estate, you really can't survive in residential real estate till you treat it full-time, hardcore, focused efforts. Commercials no different, other than commercials completely different, but it's no different in that aspect. You don't dabble. There's no, yeah, I would kind of do that on the side. I kind of crack up, but
that brings us to the not getting sued part of this conversation.
Yeah, it's just like with anything. It's serious business. Residential real estate, serious business. You're dealing with people's homes. This is a big investment. It's serious business. And in commercial, it's the same thing, but it's their business as opposed to their home. It is major money a lot of times, major capital. And if you're not up to snuff and you're faking it till you make it,
yeah,
it's going to show. It could lead into legal issues. I've seen it happen with veteran real estate residential agents. They're like, wait, I've been doing this 10 years. I know real estate. The flip side of it is I've been in at 13. My wife joined me 10 years ago. When we buy or sell a house, we don't do it ourselves, Joe.
I don't sell my own. I didn't sell my own.
We hire a professional. We just sold a Florida home not that long ago. We hired Leslie Williams, and she used to work up here, and I tracked her down, and I didn't know exactly where she was in Florida, but I knew she was in Florida, and she's in Fort Myers. I said, can you serve Cape Coral? And she said, absolutely. I said, we need to hire you.
Yeah.
It just
what you know.
And she did a great job. We got better things to do. So we stay in our lane. We let the pro take care of what needed to be taken care of down in Florida. And even if it was just here in Cary, we would do the same thing. Stay in our lane, focus on what we're doing, and let the pros, the experienced ones, take care of what needs to be taken care of. And we just try to encourage that with the other agents, because if you try to fake it, it's going to come out and it could lead to serious legal trouble.
Yeah. Give us a summary. What are some of the issues or some of the typical, I don't know, there's probably no typical setup, right?
Everything's different, but let's just give you a scenario, say a triple net lease. In a triple net lease, there's responsibilities that are going to be put on the tenant. So if I'm representing the tenant in a triple net lease, let's just say it's a retail. Let's just keep it simple. It's an inline retail space, 2,000 feet. The square footage really doesn't matter. The larger, the more the tonnage or the more zones for HVAC. So I'm leading towards the HVAC route. So in a triple net lease, that tenant's going to have responsibilities, not only with paying their own utilities, but they're going to have some responsibility in regards to repairs and or replace of said HVAC. Well, retail landlords are notorious to say, oh, no, sorry, that's all on you, the tenant. Well, I'm sorry, I don't accept that as a commercial real estate broker representing my client. My client is not in the business to buy you, Mr. and Mrs. Landlord, a brand new HVAC unit, because that thing's on 20 years old.
Right.
All right. Well, an inexperienced agent who's just dabbling may not catch some of that verbiage. What it means. You got to realize a lot of these retail HVAC units, they're RTUs, rooftop units. Well, I'm sorry, that agent's not going to climb up on that roof. You actually got to do some digging, because when I go into a triple net lease, one of the first things I do is figure out the age of that unit and how many units are there. Because then if it's a 20-year-old unit, my negotiating is going to be very different to a 6-year-old unit.
Right.
And you got to realize some of these units, it could be 15, 20 grand for replacement, depending on the system, depending on the, on the size of the suite. That could put a hurting on any business, just like that.
Yeah.
And then you go to the landlord and say, well, it's your unit. If I buy a new unit, I can't take that unit with me. It's your unit, landlord. And what's the landlord going to do? What does it say in the lease? That's all they have to say. What does it say in your lease?
Right.
Okay. We know some of the same people, and you can ask the same questions. They're like, hey, did you have any HVAC issues at your office space? You'd be surprised at what you would hear. Some individuals may start crying.
It can get bad. So let's talk about,
and that's just an example. That's all. That's just one example.
Oh, and then there's build out costs. I remember you talking about one with you needed to understand the load that the floor could take for weight, garage door sizes for trucks to pull in. I know there's a ton of different things.
Oh my God, that was a great conversation. That was about the fire truck load capacity.
Yeah,
that was a good one. Yeah, I like that one a lot. That was really interesting, and I was reassured that it's going to be able to take the load. I'm like, okay, because these things are monsters. These fire trucks are monsters. and the load that I was just like, okay. So yeah, just, that's what I like about commercial real estate. It is never boring. I deal with a lot of great people, very knowledgeable people. I try to learn as much as I can on every deal, and I continue to learn. Like I said, I've been doing this 13 years. I continue to learn. There's so much.
So what's the best way? We know residential real estate agents should not be selling or talking about commercial real estate. How do they make that transition from hearing about an opportunity and getting it to you?
Well, not necessarily to me, but all residential agents, in my opinion, really shouldn't even worry about commercial real estate. But what they should do is find their commercial partner, especially if, I don't know where this broadcast goes to, but in the greater Triangle area where Julie and I do most of our work, we're very blessed in this area. There is a lot of really good commercial brokers that are good at their craft. They're reasonable to work with. They try to negotiate a win-win. Nobody's trying to cut off each other at the knees or anything. We're very, very fortunate. So that's been a blessing. But getting back to those agents, I think they need to build their own personal brand. Most residential agents, they have their own branding. And I think the majority of them are missing an opportunity by not seeking out and interviewing commercial agents that would be good referral partners for them for referral income, which would be passive income. I just call it free money, really. And two, building the brand. I think that a residential agent who's having a conversation, and I'll just use the example, at a dinner party, the residential agent is at a house by which she helped her clients buy. Okay. So the husband works for a law firm. The wife came to the agent and said, hey, this is on the down low right now, but my husband's going to leave the firm and start his own firm. Can you help us find an office space? And this is what the agent said. I can't, but my commercial partners can. I'll hook literally a 5-minute conversation.
And that's led key words, partnership.
My commercial partners, I will hook you up and they will take care of you. Now, we do that sort of business, but we don't do everything commercial real estate.
Right.
So Julie and I try to, if we get a referral, we'll do our best to see if we're a good fit for it. And if we're not, we'll try to not just say, no, we can't help you, but let me call you back. Let me see if I can find you the right commercial partner that is more experienced or does more work down that particular specific use. Okay. Because commercial real estate is so wide and there's so many scenarios. So Julie and I, not only do we stay in our lane, we try to stay really in our lane on what we're good at and what we're experienced at doing. So that was just one
silos of like the different types of businesses.
I'm sorry?
What kind of what are the variations of commercial real estate, where you're good at, where you are?
So there's various, we call them types of products. There's office, industrial, warehouse, flex, which is like a little bit of office on the front, warehouse on the back. That's flex product. You got investment, so true investors. You got people that specialize in land, for commercial purposes.
Yeah.
You got multi-unit housing, like apartment complexes. You got hospitality division, hotels, things like that. It's a wide range. Julie and I, we really don't mess with multifamily. We really don't mess with hotel. We do very little when it comes to raw land. It's just so specialized and so involved. We're just not really that experienced. We just really stay in our lane. So the majority of the work I do is industrial, warehouse, flex. I do some office. Julie does office, retail, and investment primarily. And it still covers a wide range, but it's fairly narrowed on the big swath of things.
Yeah, so, I imagine convenience stores, gas stations, things of that nature have their own.
Keep going. Yeah, exactly. So I actually went to a KW office in Raleigh where they have a handful of agents, and I sat down with them. They're like, basically, what are you doing here? What are you doing at our meeting? And I'm like, well, I heard you're having a meeting. I'm just kind of, and they kind of were bothered, but then they realized why I was there. They offered me a donut and a coffee. I was welcome to the team. It was really kind of funny. I learned what they all kind of do because there's so much business out there. Even us can say, oh gosh, we don't want to miss that opportunity. We're putting ourselves at risk. We'd be hypocritical if we're like, oh yeah, we could do that. Well, I haven't done a single transaction. I don't really know. I'm also risking liability going down that road.
Right.
So we really don't. We really stay in our lane.
And that's true. The liability policies don't cross over from residential to commercial as well. So that's something that every agent needs to understand.
Yeah.
Right. So you were
Yep.
talking about your partnership. You got a partnership with a residential agent. They hand you a lead.
Yep.
What's it going to take? What can they expect for life expectancy of that check coming in? And I'll preface that by saying in the residential world, if you have a hot buyer or hot seller, you're giving that to another residential agent outside of your market area that you shouldn't serve. And you can expect to check, 30 days to 60 days to 90 days, probably max, if they're legitimate hot.
It's a very good question, Joe. On sales, and we do sales. On sales, the check would be coming a lot quicker because we receive payment at closing like a residential agent would on a house. But typically an examination period could be much longer, not a lot longer, but typically when you use the word typically on a sales, I'll just say 90 days, maybe 120 days, depending on the leases are very different. And I'm going to use the word typically. I learned that in, licensure. There's nothing standard.
Right.
It's all negotiable. But typically on a lease, say we're doing a lease for a medical office. Well, that medical office, the building's built, but the suite's not built out yet. So there's a lot of significant build out that needs to be done. You're talking permits. So say you negotiate the lease, but you're negotiating an empty cold box. You know what I mean? There's a lot of negotiating going on with that right now. So we execute a lease. There's a good chance we're going to get paid 50% upon execution or within 30 days upon execution. But the other 50% of the commissions due would be upon rent commencement. Take your pick. That could be 6 months later, 12 months later. One of my biggest deals of my career was a large industrial warehouse. And when we were negotiating the lease, we were looking at dirt because it was a build-to-suit. We were taking the whole building. It was 120,000 square feet. For a 10-year lease. Okay. I didn't get the other half of the commission for 18.
Yeah. We're watching a restaurant right now. It's been been moving in for about 18, 19 months.
Yeah.
It's still not
over. Probably started out as cold shell or even not even a building.
Yeah. It's taking forever.
It does. So it's funny because I have a referring agent. He's not in our office, a different office. And he emailed, he goes, wait, how come I haven't gotten my referral check yet? And I'm like, well, let me explain things to you. We negotiated on her behalf on the front end of the lease outside the term. So she did a 3-year lease, but it's really a 38-month lease. The first 2 months are renovated. The other 50% is paid upon rent commencement, not when she moves in. He goes, oh, okay. I said, you'll get your check. I just can't pay it until we get paid.
Right.
They just don't know what they don't know. And I'm happy to explain it to them, but they don't grasp the concept of how these leases are paid out. It really catches them off guard because they're so used to buying a house or selling a house. They get paid at closing, bing, bang, boom, that, everybody washes their hands. They go. So and again, that's the case for us in sales, same thing,
But even on the sales side, finding the right property, you typically have some pretty tight requirements for the different businesses you're working with.
We do, especially with inventory being so low. I don't know what the stats are, but I hear the residential agents talk about, 60 to 70 people every day moving into Wake County and things like that. A lot of these folks are small business folks, so they're needing business space. So it kind of runs into play. We're such a booming market from a business perspective. Inventory is low. Now, people read these stories or may hear the news about these large, oh my gosh, look at all this office, it's flooded the market. There's so much open office environment. That's true and false. The true part is, yes, there's a lot of Class A office high-rise square footage available, but they're typically big footprints or full floors. And most businesses looking for office space, they're small businesses looking for 5,000 square feet or less. Very, very tight market. But when you start getting into that 5,000 to 8,000 square foot range, you start getting into that bigger office footprint, a lot of vacancy, a lot of openness. You know what I mean? But that's that 5,000 to 8,000 square feet transition. And then big footprints.
Yeah.
You know, I had a law firm, they needed around 10,000 square feet, and it was great because we had a lot of leverage, because we could have toured for weeks within a 3-mile radius of Glenwood and the Beltline because there's so much vacancy.
Yeah.
And they're in a particular building, and that landlord, and I knew that landlord, they're like, we don't want to lose these guys, because they were moving from 5,000 square feet to 10. Okay.
Wow.
So we took the bigger suite. It's going to be much easier for that landlord's agent to fill the 5,000. But if we left the 5,000 and didn't fill the 10, that means they have a 5 and a 10. I would have gone down the road for 10,000. And I had so much leverage. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe how much leverage I had. I haven't had leverage like that in probably 8 years, 7 years. It was awesome.
I'm sure your clients are pleased with that.
They were very happy. In fact, it's funny. He goes, Brian, he goes, I might need to use you at my next trial. I'm like, he was just making, it was a nice compliment. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right, Brian, I appreciate you coming on. Any last tips for a residential real estate agent?
Just if they're really unhappy in residential real estate and they really think commercial real estate is their calling, then there's probably ways to try to pursue it and try to get interviewed and get set up and try to meet some of the larger firms and see if they have any openings. Because I think having a real estate license already with some experience in real estate property, I think would be helpful. So I think there's opportunities. But for those agents who are selling houses and they're making money, one thing they need to understand is in commercial real estate, they're not all big ticket items. I think it's a false understanding. The average house, they're getting paid pretty good money at closing. A lot of the businesses that we work with are small businesses, and they're doing 1,500 square feet, maybe a 3-year lease, you know, and I might be getting paid $2,000 for that transaction. Do you see the correlation?
Yeah. Yeah.
But sometimes, and I think real estate agents or real estate offices are the worst at this. Oh, Brian and Julie just got a deal done for X amount. And that's all the residential agents hear, are sometimes these bigger ticket items. Right. I'm like, whoa, stop the press, guys. The majority of the business we do are small offices, and small offices typically don't buy buildings. They typically do leases, and these leases are quite small. And it's funny because I don't really educate or inform the referring agent of what we're doing and how's it going. And they get this referral check of like $700. They're like, what's this?
What happens?
Well, this is your referral check.
Yeah.
What? I'm like, yeah, it was a small lease for 3 years and we got paid $2,100 and you got $700.
Right.
And they're like, but that's like $3,000 total. I'm like, yeah. They're like, what went wrong? I'm like, nothing. Yeah. So it's kind of funny.
It was $700 for making an introduction. I'll take it.
Right. But then other deals, like, you know, Julie did a great transaction. It was still a lease, but it was a long-term lease. And it was really around COVID, so we couldn't meet with the agent. And we played a trick on her. We got one of those big checks and we put it up to the Zoom, and it was back here. And we moved the check up, and she almost fell out of her chair because it was $30,000. Wow. But you got to realize it took Julie 9 months to get that deal done. So I kind of just said to the agent, I said, okay, this might be a tough question. Would you rather work hard for 9 months and get paid 90, or would you rather take 10 minutes of your time and get paid 30?
Yeah. The hourly return's way better.
I don't know, but she doesn't need to lose focus on her residential real estate business, and she'll get paid $30,000 for 10 minutes of time. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of relative, and they're not all like that. That was one of Julie's biggest deals of her career. That's just an example. But typically they're small leases, and every lease matters, because Julie and I know this from experience, and most residential agents understand this too. Just because it's a small business doing a 3-year lease now doesn't mean they're not going to be bigger later.
That's right. And on the other side of that, residential real estate agent is now a resource, not just for residential. They're serving a bigger cause. They're really helping out the client. And now that, you know, so why not keep them engaged and make some money on the other end?
Yeah. And that first time home buyer, maybe their first house was $300,000 or, you know, 325. And then they have good equity and they got a couple kids now. They need to upsize. So they call that agent. Now that agent is selling that house for hopefully a profit margin for the young couple. And then, so they're selling the house and then buying them a new one, So the smaller deals constantly lead into bigger deals. And that is in residential, that's in commercial, especially with us. I won the Triangle Business Journal Warehouse Deal of the Year years ago, and it started with a client 2 years before that, and all they needed was some extra storage, and I got them some extra storage, but that extra storage led to something bigger, which led to something bigger, which led to the Triangle Business Journal Deal of the Year for warehouse. And it started just, I need some extra storage. Yeah, so you never know. That's why with Julie and I, we just want to help out as many people as we can if we feel we're the right fit. It's got nothing to do with paycheck. We know that we'll get our due in the long run. It'll all average out. Yeah, so we just, I don't know. If you ask Julie really likes what she does. I love what we do.